Hey everybody, welcome back to Winnemac Hockey, where today we are starting the 2022 off-season analysis series, which is crazy to think because it feels like just yesterday we were doing 2021. The season has absolutely flown by. But we're going to start by talking about the team that finished last in the standings this year, which surprisingly to a lot of people was the Montreal Canadiens. So stay tuned and we'll get into the video. All right, guys. So today we're talking about the Montreal Canadiens, who finished dead last in the National Hockey League this season, which was surprising to a lot of people since they made the Stanley Cup Final the season before. Overall, they finished 22, 49, and 11, which was only good for 55 points. Not what you're looking for after making a Stanley Cup Final appearance. So in this video, basically we're going to break it down by doing the season recap. Then we'll move on to the off-season and talk about what we think Montreal could do to improve their team for next season. And then we'll jump into the next season preview. So, guys, let's start with the season recap. As I said, they had 55 points. But honestly, guys, what happened to the Canadiens this season?
You've got to look at Carey Price, right? You look at how well he did, especially in the playoffs last season, and that's a big missing piece. So I think it really was him as well as their coach who sent Cole Caufield down to start the season. That's a huge confidence destroyer. And so I think that was also a big reason why they weren't doing well. They didn't believe in the coach. The coach didn't believe in them, and they were missing Carey Price.
Yeah, Matt, do you have anything to add to that, or Jake kind of sum it up for us?
I think he did a good job with that one. I think it's a lot of different factors, really. I mean, going into the season, they knew they weren't going to have their captain, Shea Weber, which is when you're not going to have your captain for the whole season because you already know he's done for the rest of the season. It kind of kills a lot of momentum. So when you're coming off a cup run and you're losing a lot of pieces, let alone your goaltender goes down the first couple of games of the season, it kind of just takes all the wind out of the sails. And they were already trading off pieces. And Christian Dvorak was traded just before the beginning of the season. And they were looking at it as kind of a retool. But then when Carey Price went down, I think they were just like, yeah, this is definitely a rebuild. And that's when it really started to flow. And it didn't help their coach sucked as well. So, I think just a lost season for them.
Yeah, so let's kind of look at the bright side of things, because obviously there wasn't a whole lot to the season besides their final game, putting a 10 bomb up against Florida. That was impressive. But other than that, there wasn't much that really came from this season. But let's talk about some of the players and who you guys think was their best player for the season, or their most important asset, I should say. And Matt, let's start with you.
I thought it was a dude who, like Jake said, wasn't even getting into the lineup at the beginning of the season. But as he got into this in the lineup, he showed that he should have been in the lineup the whole time. That's Cole Caufield. The dude had 23 goals, and he only played like 50-something games because most of the time he's either being scratched or he was dealing with, I think he had an injury for about a week or so when he was coming back to the lineup. But when he's in the lineup, he's a dynamic player, and especially under the new coach, he was really working it well. And he was showing that sniping ability, showed the reason why he was a first-round pick this year.
Mm-hmm. Jake, how about you? Who do you think was the most valuable player for the Montreal Canadiens this season?
Well, my most important player is actually the guy behind the bench, and that's the coach. Marty St. Louis completely flipped this team. And obviously they still finished last, so it wasn't like a miracle run. But under him, they were 14, 19, and 4, whereas before him, they were 8, 30, and 7, which is abysmal. You cannot do that badly. If they would have stayed on that route, they probably would have been relegated because that's just terrible. But under Marty St. Louis, the team looked like they had new energy, and they were much better, and I think that they can build from here. Still continue with the rebuild, and there's definitely steps ahead to getting back to their next Stanley Cup Final, but definitely a step in the right direction with Marty St. Louis.
Yeah, I think both you guys had some good points there. For me, I think it was another youngster on that squad in Nick Suzuki, he put up 61 points in 82 games for a team that only won 22 games. So for me, I thought that he really took up some leadership and really kind of stepped up into that role that the Canadiens hoped that he would be. So that for me was an important factor to see. So yeah, we have Caufield, St. Louis, the coach, not a player, but hey, he was definitely important for them. And Nick's is so yeah, that pretty much does it for the season recap. Like I said, there wasn't really a whole lot to discuss there. They obviously underperformed, like you said, Jake. So let's take a transition here into the offseason, which is going to be crucial for these guys because, do they commit to a rebuild here? They're kind of in an odd situation. Do they commit to a rebuild or do they try to, with Carey Price coming back, do they try to just put the team together and try to go for the playoffs? I mean, that's the first question that I'm intrigued for you guys to answer. So what do you guys think? Rebuild or try to get back in the playoffs?
I think you absolutely have to rebuild. I think this season showed that I don't want to call a couple seasons ago playoffs a fluke because that team, like the Stanley Cup playoffs, are no fluke. You have to win 7 or you have to win a best of 7. So it's no accident when you progress. So that team deserved to be in the final. But this season shows that maybe the miracle is over. And so you just need to rebuild and get back at it.
Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with him 100%. I think last year may have given fans for Montreal a little bit of false hope that maybe they were able to continue the success this year. But with all the factors that we said going into this season that led to this, and then how abysmal this season ended up being for them, I think it's a slap in the face in reality that they need to start tearing this down.
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys because before their cup run, I mean, really, they weren't around in the playoffs very much at all. So I think it's time for Montreal to accept the fact that it's going to be better to tear some pieces down and get some better assets into the building. So with that, they run into a little bit of a problem. Their anticipated cap for the year is at the ceiling at 82.5 mil. So if they want to bring people in, they're going to have to make some trades because they can't sign anyone, at least at this moment. So how do you think they go about this? Because this is not what you want as a GM if you're going into a rebuild. You would like to have some cap space. So do they try to make something happen there? Matt, I'll start with you.
If they're going to do anything, it's probably most likely offering some of their older, bad contracts to teams who maybe need depth. Like I'm looking at a guy like a Brendan Gallagher, maybe, who I consider probably the worst contract on the team right now. He's making over $6.5 million for 6 more years, and he's 31 years old right now. So he's plus coming off a season where he only had 24 points in 56 games. If you're getting paid $6.5 million, you really need to produce better than that. I know the season was a loss, and I think he's the guy that probably gets sent. I don't know, looking at a team that needs some winger depth, but he's one guy that definitely need to get sent off. I do for another player, though, kind of a controversial one. I think if they're thinking about it, I think Carey Price could be on the move this summer. But he's got 4 more years remaining. If they have the salary, retain it to where he's only making about $5 million. That's like starting goaltender money for the next 4 years. He's only going to be 38 at the end of that contract. So I think a team I'm looking at is Washington, a team that kind of struck out going from Marc-Andre Fleury last year, and a team that really needs goaltending going into next season. I think Carey Price fits in perfectly with their old-ish regime that they have there in Washington. I think if they send maybe a sign and trade of Samsonov or as a mid-round pick, a 3rd-round pick maybe, honestly, probably could get it done, especially with what we don't know how well Carey Price is going to be, but we know at full 100% he is really good. So I think that's something that if Washington wants to take a swing at it, they can, and that'll be so beneficial for this Montreal squad to get that much salary off the books.
Jake, what are your thoughts on that? Gallagher and Price.
Well, let's start with Price. And as someone who pays close attention to the Capitals, I would love for them to get such a high caliber goalie. The problem is I don't know that they have the cap room because Price is 10 mil, 10.5 mil actually. So I think that they would have to do some magic to get that under the cap. And I think there are some cheaper options that they'll try to go for. The first team that came into my head there was Vegas, because I think that they're going to have cap issues as well. But they're also sort of, the fans are already turning on Robin Lehner, and they're going to be in need of a goalie. So I think that they only look at like the proven guys. Like they want to steal everyone. So I think Carey Price is the guy that they look at as a successful player, and I think that they could go after him, even if maybe the Canadiens have to retain some of that cap for it to work out. But as far as Brendan Gallagher goes, I think that every single fan of the Canadiens loves that man. Sure, he has more fights than he does points, but he's the heart of the team. So I think it would be tough to see him go as a Canadiens fan. But in the same breath, this is a new GM. This is a very new coach. So they don't have to stick with the old guard, right? So this GM could say, I don't owe you anything. Brendan Gallagher, who? Like, what can you get me on the trade market? So I could see that if they wanted to get rid of him, especially at 6.5 mil. But, if I'm the Canadiens, I probably sit still. I did hear a rumor that they were trying to dump Shea Weber's contract with Jonathan Drouin to the Arizona Coyotes, because that's a team that's looking to bring in money. So even if it's not necessarily that trade, maybe that's a team that they look to make a trade with to dump some cap.
Yeah, and if they go and they're able to free up some of that cap space, no matter how they go about it, are there any players in mind that you think they go after, or do you think that they just strictly go through the draft here? I mean, they have the first overall pick. They can get Shane Wright. Boom. There's some offense for you right there. Do you think that they should go directly for the draft and just kind of play it safe during free agency and maybe try to get a steal of a contract? Or do you think that they should trade and go after someone that they really like?
I think they definitely have to commit to the suck, and they just need to be bad for a little while. And if you can move one of your players for a high draft pick, so if the price is right for Brendan Gallagher, for example, and they can get maybe a first or a second round pick for him, I think you take it. Like, sorry to the fans, but I think the fans also realize we don't want to have another 50 loss season. So I think that they would understand. And I think the GM could look to try to obtain picks instead of players.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent that you can get out there for 6.5 mil. So as a fan, I think that they would be a little understanding, even though it kind of hurts to see him go. Matt, what are your thoughts on the matter?
Well, like I said, I think it's a big option that they have to look at. Teams are going to want him. As much as he maybe underperformed this season, he's still a well-known commodity that's been able to play well for them in the past. So I think if you find a team that it's like a Buffalo, or like Jake said, in Arizona, or a team like a Anaheim or something like that with a lot of salary cap that's willing to bring in some veteran leadership, I think he fits well for a lot of those other teams. And yeah, like Jake said, I think he could be on the move.
If we look at a team like the New York Rangers, that as we record this is in the third round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the thing that they were missing last season was that grit, the kind of grit that someone like Gallagher provides. So what did they do? They went out and they got Ryan Reeves, and that turned out to be the missing piece. So, I think teams could look at him for that aspect of his game.
Mm-hmm.
True. That is an undervalued element of the game, especially in this era of hockey where the rules have constantly been changing and defenses have had to adjust accordingly. So with that, is there anything else you guys think that Montreal could accomplish in this offseason? You guys said commit to the rebuild, so obviously they're not trying to fix it all in one season with that mentality. But is there anything else you guys have up your sleeve?
Just draft Shane Wright. If they don't draft Shane Wright and they try to go off the board, this season is an L. It's just a giant loss.
Yeah. Matt, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with him. And I also have one thing that I wanted to add. There's one dude, if they can bring back any of their RFAs from this team, I know there's a lot of bad ones. There's one dude they picked up from waivers, though, named Rem Pitlick, who had 37 points in 66 games. So for a dude to be claimed off waivers and have that well of a season for them, I think he's somebody they probably should look to bring back.
Yeah, you said Pitlick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking at that list as well, and I think if you're going to bring back Rem Pitlick, you got to bring back Tyler Pitlick, right? Like it's a combo, and the NHL is all about family right now. So I think that would be good. Bring them both, package deal. In addition to that, make Nick Suzuki the captain at the start of next season when you get rid of the Shea Weber contract. I think that makes it the perfect offseason for them.
Yeah. I mean, he did get a nice payday, so they obviously expect him to be there for a long time. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree, fellas. All right, so let's hop into the final chapter here, the next season preview. So with the things we have talked about, assuming that some of these things may happen, how do you think Montreal does next season, and who do you think is really going to take a step up for them? Jake, let's start with you.
So I think it's not going to be great. I think that the way that Montreal plays is so if they say they keep Carey Price, like Matt said, that Price could be coming back, which would be a huge boost to that team. And then Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki take another step in their development. I don't think it would be another terrible season like this season started out as. Plus a full season as with Marty St. Louis as the coach. I see this team being not a playoff team by any means, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they finished in the 22 to 26 range. So not like the absolute bottom feeders, but not a team that you're really like, well, they might make the playoffs. They're going to kind of be mediocre.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm probably agreeing with Jake on this one. I think they're going to be a lot of pretty mediocre. And when you're looking at it, they have 14 draft picks for this next upcoming draft. So they're going to have a lot of young talent coming into that organization. How much of those draft picks actually end up playing for them, I don't know. Hopefully the first overall pick. But I think a little bit excitement. I mean, if they end up taking Shane Wright, and they better end up taking Shane Wright, I mean, seeing him playing in the NHL is going to be a big thing for those fans to look forward to. I think really, all in all, it's just about development at this point and trying to offer any contracts you can to gain a little bit of salary cap, a little bit of relief, so you can do something this off season afterward. Yeah, I agree with Jake. I think around like the 21st to 25th position ish in the league is not a horrible place for them for next season, and it gives them room to grow from there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you guys 100%. I think that they're gonna miss the playoffs, at least from the looks of it right now, unless they pull something crazy. But yeah, I think they're gonna miss the playoffs. But I also don't think that they're gonna be looking at a top 3 or maybe even top 5 pick next year. I think that unless they win the lottery, that's how it would happen. Because like you guys said, they're probably gonna finish up in the higher 20 range. So, all right, with that, fellas, are there any other comments that you would like to add as we wrap up our discussion on Montreal?
I do have one thing to add. Earlier, you said that there's not really a bright side. Montreal Canadian fans, if you stuck with us this long, I have the bright side for you. If you were going to have a bad season, let it be this season right now. You've got your old guys. They're on the way out. That was inevitable. You had your dream run last season. No one can make fun of you because if you're 90% of the league, your team didn't make the Stanley Cup Final last year. So they can't make fun of you. Then you have this season where, and again, we're not based out of Canada. So if you're getting bullied in Canada, sorry, missed that. But as far as the U.S. goes, no one's really making fun of the Canadiens. They're making fun of the Coyotes because they are a laughing stock. They could have been 5th in the entire league, and they're still a laughing stock because of this arena situation. So you've got that distraction. You've got the Maple Leafs doing Maple Leafs things, which, that should also distract from any Canadian bullying that would happen. And on top of that, we're coming out of COVID. And I think that the Canadiens were one of the last teams to get their fans back in attendance. So they need to make up some money. And how do you do that? You draft Shane Wright and you sell a lot of Shane Wright jerseys. So there's your bright side.
Shane Wright is the light at the end of the tunnel for the Montreal Canadiens. You heard it here first, fellas. All right, everyone. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this video. We hope you enjoyed it, and let us know what you think in the comments below. Are we complete idiots, or do you think we're onto something? We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time on Winamac Hockey.